Keep the change, ma'am. The words sounded ordinary enough, but less than 10 minutes later, they would cost Naomi Carter her job. Rain tapped softly against the front windows of Maple and Oak Grill, turning the neon reflections outside into streaks of red and blue across the wet pavement. It was nearly 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, and the dinner rush had long faded into the quiet hum of ceiling fans, distant traffic, and dishes clinking behind the kitchen doors. Naomi balanced a tray against her hip as she moved between tables with the practiced grace of someone who had spent years taking care of people she would never see again. At 29 years old, she knew every creak in the floorboards, every regular customer's favorite meal, and every shortcut that made a 12-hour shift feel a little shorter. Her feet ached. Her shoulders were tight. But she still smiled when she walked past a family finishing dessert near the window. Most people never noticed the effort behind a smile like hers. Then the bell above the entrance chimed. A man stepped inside from the rain. He looked tired. Not dangerous. Not important. Just tired. His dark jacket was damp from the storm, and his gray baseball cap shadowed most of his face. He paused for a moment, glancing around the nearly empty restaurant before choosing a booth in the corner. Naomi grabbed a menu and approached. "Good evening, sir," she said warmly. "Can I get you started with some coffee?" The man looked up and offered a small smile. "That sounds perfect." His voice was calm, polite, almost grateful. Over the next hour, Naomi checked on him a few times. He ordered a simple meal. Nothing expensive. Nothing memorable. Yet something about him stood out. Unlike many customers, he looked directly at people when they spoke. He thanked the busboy when his water was refilled. He even complimented the cook after finishing dinner. Small things. Rare things. By 10:45, the restaurant was nearly empty. Naomi dropped the check on the table and began stacking chairs nearby. A few minutes later, she noticed the man searching through his pockets. Then his jacket. Then the booth seat. His expression changed. Not panic. Embarrassment. The kind that made a person look smaller. Naomi approached quietly. "Everything okay?" The man exhaled. "I'm afraid I lost my wallet." Before Naomi could answer, the manager, Donna Reed, appeared from across the room. "Problem here?" she asked sharply. The stranger stood. "I can pay. I just need a few minutes." Donna crossed her arms. "That's what they all say." The restaurant suddenly felt quieter. Naomi saw several remaining customers glance over. The man lowered his eyes. For a brief moment he looked completely alone. Then Naomi reached into her apron. Her fingers closed around the last $20 she had planned to use for groceries the next morning. Without hesitation, she placed the bills on the table. "It's covered," she said softly. The stranger stared at her. "You don't have to do that." Naomi smiled. "Everybody needs a little help sometimes." Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, Donna's face hardened, and as Naomi folded the paid receipt and set it beside the coffee cup, she had no idea that the quiet stranger sitting across from her was about to change her life forever. The stranger remained seated for a moment after Naomi placed the money beside the receipt. Rain traced thin lines down the restaurant windows, and the soft glow from the neon sign painted the empty booths in shades of blue and gold. He looked at the $20 bill as if it weighed far more than paper should. "Thank you," he said quietly. Naomi gave a small nod. "Just get home safe, sir." She turned to gather the last stack of menus, hoping the conversation would end there. It did not. Donna Reed stepped forward, her heels striking the tile floor with sharp, deliberate clicks. "Office. Now." The words cut through the room. Naomi froze. A few remaining customers looked up from their tables. Even the dishwasher paused behind the service window. Naomi slowly faced her manager. "Donna, the bill is paid." "I said office. Now." The stranger opened his mouth as if he wanted to speak, but Donna was already walking toward the back hallway. Naomi followed. The fluorescent lights above the manager's office buzzed softly. The room smelled faintly of coffee and paperwork. Donna closed the door and folded her arms. "What exactly were you thinking?" Naomi blinked. "A customer needed help. A customer failed to pay. He said he lost his wallet." Donna let out a humorless laugh. "And you believed him?" Naomi thought of the man's embarrassed expression, the way he had searched every pocket, the way he thanked everyone who helped him. Yes, she answered simply. Donna shook her head. This is a business, not a charity. I used my own money. You embarrassed management in front of customers. Naomi stared at her. By helping someone? Donna's jaw tightened. By ignoring protocol. The silence stretched between them. Outside the office window, the kitchen staff moved through closing duties. Most avoided looking in. They knew this conversation was not going well. Donna pulled a folder from her desk. You have always been too emotional, Naomi. I care about people. You care about strangers more than company policy. Naomi felt a knot form in her chest. For 6 years she had worked double shifts, covered holidays, trained new employees, and stayed late whenever someone called out sick. Suddenly none of it seemed to matter. Donna slid a document across the desk. Turn in your apron. Naomi looked down at the paper. For a second she thought she had misunderstood. You are firing me? Effective immediately. The words landed with quiet finality. Naomi swallowed hard but kept her voice steady. Because I paid for a meal? Because you made a decision that was not yours to make. Naomi wanted to argue. She wanted to list every sacrifice she had made for the restaurant. Instead, she simply removed her name tag and placed it on the desk. Donna appeared almost surprised by the calm response. That is all, she said. A few minutes later, Naomi stepped into the dining room carrying a small cardboard box. Her apron was folded neatly inside. The employees watched in stunned silence. One waitress wiped tears from her eyes. Another looked down at the floor. No one spoke. Near the entrance, the stranger was still there. He rose from his booth when he saw her. Miss Carter. Naomi paused. Hearing her name from someone she had just met felt strange. Yes. He looked genuinely troubled. I am sorry. Naomi forced a smile. You do not need to be. Outside, the storm had grown heavier. She pushed through the front door and stepped into the cold night air. Rain soaked her jacket almost instantly. Behind her, through the glass, she saw the stranger standing alone beneath the warm restaurant lights, watching her disappear into the darkness. And for the first time all evening, the look in his eyes was no longer gratitude. It was determination. The rain continued long after Naomi Carter disappeared down the sidewalk. Inside Maple and Oak Grill, the last customers slowly drifted out into the night, carrying umbrellas and leftovers while the staff finished closing duties in uneasy silence. The stranger remained near the front window, his gaze fixed on the street where Naomi had vanished. Donna Reed finally approached him with a forced smile. I apologize for the inconvenience earlier, sir. Everything has been handled. The man turned toward her. Handled. Donna nodded confidently. Company policy exists for a reason. For a moment he said nothing. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and removed a simple business card. He placed it on the counter between them. Thank you for your time. Donna barely glanced at it. She was already thinking about payroll reports and tomorrow's lunch crowd. The stranger stepped out into the storm and disappeared into the darkness. 2 hours later, a black sedan rolled through the private entrance of a glass tower overlooking downtown Charlotte. The city lights shimmered against the wet streets below as the elevator climbed toward the top floor. The same man who had looked like an ordinary traveler now walked through a set of polished doors into a private executive suite spanning nearly the entire floor. Several people immediately stood when he entered. A silver-haired attorney closed a folder. An assistant lowered her tablet. A financial analyst paused in the middle of a presentation. Good evening, Mr. Sterling, they said almost in unison. William Sterling loosened his damp jacket and looked through the floor-to-ceiling windows toward the city below. The room remained silent. Everyone could tell something was different. William was known for making billion-dollar decisions without showing emotion. Tonight, however, there was a weight in his expression that none of them recognized. I need information, he said quietly. His assistant opened her tablet. On what company? William turned toward her. Maple and Oak Grill. She blinked. The restaurant. Everything. Ownership structure. Employee records. Management history. Financials. Complaints. Lawsuits. All of it. The team exchanged confused glances. Maple and Oak was a single neighborhood restaurant. Normally it would never appear on William Sterling's radar. "How soon do you need it?" the attorney asked. William walked toward his desk. "By morning." No one questioned him further. Within minutes, phones were ringing. Databases were opening. Reports were being requested. Meanwhile, 20 miles away, Naomi unlocked the door to a small apartment tucked above an aging laundromat. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old wood. She stepped inside quietly. A lamp glowed in the corner. Her mother, Lorraine Carter, sat asleep in a recliner with a blanket across her lap. Medical bills rested on the side table beside unopened mail. Naomi gently set down her cardboard box and stared at it. 6 years of work reduced to a folded apron, a name tag, and a few photographs from employee parties. She sank onto the couch and covered her face with her hands. Not because she regretted helping the stranger. She did not. What frightened her was tomorrow. Rent was due in 10 days. Her mother depended on her. Every dollar mattered. Across the city, William Sterling sat alone in his office reviewing the first pages of a report arriving faster than expected. His eyes stopped on a section labeled Employee Feedback. One name appeared again and again. Naomi Carter. Hardworking. Trusted. Compassionate. The employee customers asked for by name. William leaned back in his chair. Outside, thunder rolled above the skyline. Inside, a slow smile touched the corner of his mouth. For the first time that evening, he knew exactly what he was going to do next. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the apartment window and the distant rumble of delivery trucks moving through the city. Naomi Carter had slept only a few hours. She sat at the small kitchen table wearing a simple sweater, a notebook open in front of her as she calculated bills with careful precision. Rent, utilities, prescription costs for her mother. Every number seemed heavier than the last. Across from her, Lorraine Carter stirred her coffee and studied her daughter quietly. "You are going to find something else," she said gently. Naomi managed a smile. "I know, but the truth was harder. Jobs with decent pay were not easy to find overnight." She spent the morning updating applications, sending resumes, and checking listings online. By noon she had submitted more than a dozen applications and received exactly 0 responses. Still she kept going. That was who she was. She had learned long ago that giving up never paid the bills. Several miles away, inside the executive conference room at Sterling Capital Holdings, a very different morning was unfolding. Floor-to-ceiling screens displayed reports, financial statements, employee reviews, and ownership records connected to Maple and Oak Grill. William Sterling stood at the head of the table reading page after page. The deeper he looked, the less impressed he became. Employee turnover was unusually high. Customer satisfaction had declined for 3 consecutive years. Multiple complaints described dismissive management practices. One report included anonymous comments from former staff members who described feeling undervalued and ignored. William placed the file down. "And Naomi Carter?" he asked. His lead analyst slid another folder across the table. 6 years employed. Excellent performance reviews. Customer praise. No disciplinary record. Multiple guests specifically requested her section. William opened the file. There was a photograph attached from an employee recognition event. Naomi stood near the back of the group, smiling modestly while others celebrated around her. "Interesting," William said quietly. The attorney seated beside him adjusted his glasses. "There is more." He handed over several pages. William read in silence. Naomi regularly volunteered at community food drives. She helped elderly neighbors with transportation. She worked extra shifts whenever coworkers faced emergencies. None of it appeared on social media. None of it was done for attention. She simply helped people because she believed it was the right thing to do. William looked toward the city skyline beyond the glass windows. The image of $20 on a restaurant table returned to his mind. $20 that clearly meant far more to her than it ever would to him. Meanwhile, Naomi walked 3 blocks to a neighborhood employment center carrying a folder of resumes. The autumn air was cool, and leaves drifted along the sidewalk in the afternoon breeze. She stepped inside, signed her name, and waited nearly an hour before meeting with the counselor. The conversation was polite but discouraging. Most available positions paid significantly less than her previous job. As Naomi exited the building, she paused beside a bus stop and looked up at the gray sky. For the first time since being fired, uncertainty began pressing against her optimism. Back at Sterling Capital, William closed the final report and looked around the room. His executives waited silently. "Prepare the acquisition team," he said. Several heads lifted. "For Maple and Oak Grill?" one executive asked. William nodded. Immediately, the room fell still. Acquiring an entire restaurant over a single incident sounded irrational to anyone who did not understand what William understood now. Some investments were about profit. Others were about principle. And as he stared at Naomi Carter's employee file one last time, he knew exactly which kind this was. By late afternoon, the city seemed suspended beneath a blanket of gray clouds. A cool breeze swept through the streets as people hurried home from work, unaware that decisions worth millions of dollars were being made behind closed doors. Inside Sterling Capital Holdings, acquisition specialists moved with unusual urgency. Conference rooms filled. Documents were reviewed. Calls were placed. Lawyers exchanged contracts. What normally took months was being compressed into hours. William Sterling sat quietly at the end of a long table, listening as advisors presented final details. "The owner is willing to sell," one attorney reported. "Faster than expected." William was not surprised. Every business had a price. The difference was that most people never met someone willing to pay it. "Any concerns?" he asked. A financial analyst opened another folder. "There are operational issues. Staff dissatisfaction. Declining customer loyalty. Several experienced employees have already left." William nodded. None of it contradicted what he had already learned. In fact, it confirmed it. The restaurant was surviving on reputation while slowly losing the people who made that reputation possible. Meanwhile, across town, Naomi Carter sat in a crowded public library, using one of the community computers. She continued submitting applications. Restaurant jobs, hotel jobs, administrative jobs, anything that might provide stable income. The screen reflected in her tired eyes as another application disappeared into the digital void. "Thank you for applying. We will contact you if your qualifications match our needs." She had read that sentence so many times it no longer felt real. Her phone remained silent. No interviews. No callbacks. No opportunities. As evening approached, she packed her folder and walked toward the bus stop. Near the corner, she noticed an elderly man struggling to carry several grocery bags. Without hesitation, she crossed the street. "Sir, would you like some help?" The man smiled gratefully. "I would appreciate that." Together they carried the bags nearly 2 blocks. When they reached his apartment building, he thanked her repeatedly. Naomi simply wished him a good evening and continued on her way. She never noticed someone watching from inside a parked car across the street. The observer picked up a phone. "She just did it again," the voice said. "Help somebody?" came the response. Without being asked. Several miles away, William Sterling ended the call and stared out the window of his office. A faint smile appeared. Some people performed kindness when cameras were present. Others performed it when nobody was watching. Naomi clearly belonged to the second group. As darkness settled across Charlotte, final signatures began arriving electronically. One by one, documents were completed. Ownership percentages transferred. Accounts changed hands. Control shifted quietly from one set of people to another. Near 9 o'clock, William reviewed the final agreement. His legal team waited. "Everything is ready," the lead attorney said. William signed the last page. The sound of the pen moving across paper seemed almost insignificant compared to what it represented. An entire business had just changed ownership. "When do we announce?" an executive asked. William closed the folder. "Tomorrow morning." Back at Maple and Oak Grill, Donna Reed locked the front entrance and switched off several dining room lights. She felt unusually pleased with herself. The troublesome employee was gone. Operations were back under control. Customers would forget the incident within days. Life would continue exactly as before. She could not have been more wrong. Because while the restaurant settled into darkness for the night, a new name had already been placed at the top of every ownership document. And by sunrise, nothing inside those walls would belong to the people who believed they were still in charge. The next morning began like any other at Maple and Oak Grill. Coffee machines hissed. Plates clattered. The smell of bacon and fresh biscuits drifted through the dining room as customers filled booths before work. Donna Reed walked through the restaurant with renewed confidence. She straightened menus, adjusted a centerpiece near the entrance, and spoke to employees with the certainty of someone who believed she had won. More than once she glanced toward the section Naomi Carter used to manage. The empty tables did not bother her. If anything, they seemed to confirm her authority. "Everything runs smoother when people follow the rules," she remarked to a server carrying a tray of orange juice. The young woman forced a polite smile but said nothing. Most of the staff still felt unsettled. Naomi had been one of the few employees everyone trusted. Her absence lingered like a missing light in a familiar room. Around 10 o'clock, several black vehicles pulled into the parking lot outside. Their polished exteriors reflected the morning sun. One after another, professionally dressed men and women stepped out carrying folders, briefcases, and tablets. Customers near the windows began noticing. Employees exchanged curious looks. Donna frowned. "Who are they?" she asked. No one knew. The front door opened and the group entered together. Conversations throughout the restaurant softened. The atmosphere changed instantly. The visitors were not customers. That much was obvious. They moved with purpose, scanning the room before gathering near the entrance. A woman in a navy business suit approached the hostess stand. "Good morning," she said politely. "We are here regarding ownership transition." The hostess blinked. "Ownership transition?" Donna quickly stepped forward. "I am the manager. There must be some mistake." The woman handed over a document. "There is no mistake." Donna accepted the paperwork and began reading. Her confident expression faded almost immediately. She read the first page twice. Then a third time. "This cannot be right," she whispered. The woman remained professional. "The acquisition was finalized last night. Employees stopped working. Customers openly watched. Even the cooks peered through the service window." Donna looked around as though searching for someone to explain what was happening. Instead, the front door opened once more. A familiar figure stepped inside. The room became completely silent. The man who had entered during the storm 2 nights earlier now looked entirely different. His suit was tailored. His posture carried quiet authority. Every person accompanying him seemed to instinctively defer to him. William Sterling walked calmly into the dining room. Recognition spread slowly across several faces. One customer nearly dropped his coffee cup. Another pulled out a phone after realizing exactly who was standing in front of them. Donna stared in disbelief. "You!" William met her gaze. "Good morning, Ms. Reed." The words were polite, but they carried a weight that made the room feel smaller. Donna looked back at the acquisition documents in her trembling hands. Then, at the executives surrounding him. Then back at William. The realization finally settled in. The quiet stranger she had dismissed was one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. William surveyed the restaurant one last time. His eyes briefly paused on the empty section Naomi once served. Then he turned to his legal team. "Let us begin." And in that moment, everyone inside Maple and Oak Grill understood that the future of the restaurant was about to change forever. No one moved for several seconds after William Sterling spoke. The restaurant seemed frozen between two realities. One belonged to yesterday when Donna Reed believed she controlled everything inside those walls. The other had arrived this morning wearing a tailored suit and carrying ownership papers. William stood calmly near the center of the dining room while customers and employees watched in stunned silence. His legal team organized documents on a nearby table. The soft hum of refrigeration units and coffee machines was suddenly the only sound in the room. Donna finally found her voice. "Mr. Sterling, there has to be some misunderstanding." William looked at her without anger. "There is no misunderstanding." She forced a nervous laugh. "You bought an entire restaurant because of one dinner?" Several employees exchanged glances. William folded his hands. "No. I bought an entire restaurant because one dinner revealed a much larger problem." The words landed heavily. Donna's smile disappeared. Nearby, owner Harold Benson had arrived after receiving a frantic phone call. He rushed through the front entrance still carrying his car keys. The moment he saw William Sterling standing beside a team of attorneys, the color drained from his face. "Mr. Sterling," Harold said carefully, "I was not expecting." "That is usually how acquisitions work," William replied. Harold attempted a friendly smile. "If there are concerns, we can discuss them privately." William shook his head. "The concerns are not private. They affect every employee who works here." Several servers stopped pretending to clean tables and began listening openly. William turned toward the staff. "Over the last 48 hours I reviewed employee records, customer feedback, management reports, and operational performance." The room grew quieter with every word. "I found a business that forgot its greatest asset." He looked directly at the employees. "It's people." A young server lowered her eyes, fighting emotion. An older cook crossed his arms and nodded slowly. For years, many of them had felt invisible. William continued. "I found excellent workers leaving because they felt unappreciated. I found managers who focused on rules while ignoring character." Donna shifted uncomfortably. Harold looked as though he wished the floor would open beneath him. Then William reached into his jacket pocket and removed a folded receipt protected inside a clear sleeve. He held it up. Most people could not see the details, but the employees recognized it immediately. It was a dinner receipt. "2 nights ago," William said, "someone paid this bill with her own money." His voice remained calm. "Not because she expected a reward. Not because she knew who I was. She did it because she saw another human being in need." A murmur moved through the room. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. William looked toward Donna. And for that act of kindness, she was terminated. No one argued. No one could. The truth hung in the air between them. Then William handed the receipt to one of his attorneys and spoke the words that changed everything. "Before we discuss the future of this restaurant, there is one person who needs to be here." He turned toward his assistant. "Find Naomi Carter." Across the room, several employees smiled for the first time all morning. Because suddenly, for the first time since she walked out carrying a cardboard box in the rain, hope had returned. Less than an hour later, Naomi Carter was standing outside Maple and Oak Grill again. The call had come from an unfamiliar number. At first she thought it was another job rejection. Then she heard a calm voice ask her to return to the restaurant immediately. Now she stood on the sidewalk staring through the front windows at a scene that made no sense. Black vehicles lined the parking lot. Men and women in business attire moved through the dining room carrying folders and tablets. Customers remained seated longer than usual, whispering among themselves. Naomi tightened her grip on her purse and slowly pushed open the door. The bell above the entrance chimed softly. Every head turned. Conversations stopped. For a brief moment she considered leaving. Then she saw William Sterling standing near the center of the room. The same man she had helped 2 nights earlier. The same man she thought she would never see again. William smiled. "Miss Carter." Naomi blinked. "Sir." He gestured toward an empty chair beside a table covered with documents. "Please join us." Confusion spread across her face as she walked forward. Employees watched with anticipation. Several smiled. Others appeared close to tears. Naomi looked from William to Donna Reed, whose expression had become rigid and pale. Harold Benson stared silently at the floor. Nothing about the situation felt normal. "What is happening?" Naomi finally asked. William waited until she sat down. Then he placed the protected dinner receipt on the table between them. Naomi immediately recognized it. "You kept it?" she asked quietly. William nodded. "Some receipts are worth more than the meal." A few people chuckled softly. Naomi remained confused. William continued. 2 nights ago, you spent your last $20 helping a stranger." Naomi lowered her eyes. Anyone would have done that. Several employees exchanged knowing glances. They knew that was not true. William smiled gently. "No, not everyone would." He turned toward the staff. "Over the last 2 days I have learned a great deal about Naomi Carter." Naomi looked uncomfortable as attention shifted toward her. William continued anyway. He spoke about her work history, her reliability, her kindness toward customers, her support of coworkers, her volunteer work in the community. One by one, stories emerged from employee files, customer reviews, and personal accounts. Naomi listened in stunned silence. She had never considered any of those things extraordinary. To her, they were simply the right things to do. Then William's expression became more serious. He looked toward Donna Reed. As for the termination decision, it has been reviewed. The room grew quiet again. It was unjustified. Donna opened her mouth but quickly closed it when William raised a hand. Leadership is not about enforcing rules without judgment, he said calmly. It is about recognizing character. No one disagreed. William then turned back to Naomi. Effective immediately, your employment is fully restored with back pay. Naomi's eyes widened. A wave of relief crossed her face. But William was not finished. And there is something else. The room seemed to lean forward collectively. Employees stopped breathing. Even customers listened. William reached for a folder resting beside him and slid it across the table toward Naomi. Because what you demonstrated cannot be taught, purchased, or manufactured, he said softly. I would like to offer you an opportunity that will change your future. Naomi looked down at the folder resting in front of her. The restaurant had become so quiet that she could hear the faint ticking of the clock above the beverage station. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the cover. Inside were several documents, neatly organized and highlighted. At first she did not understand what she was reading. Then her eyes stopped on a single line. She read it again. And then a third time. Slowly, she looked up at William Sterling. This cannot be real, she whispered. William smiled. It is very real. The room waited. Naomi looked back down at the papers. The offer was not simply a promotion. It was a partnership. William wanted her to help lead the future of the restaurant. Not because she had business degrees or executive titles. Not because she had connections. Because she had demonstrated something far more valuable. Character. I do not know what to say, Naomi admitted. William folded his hands. Then start with the truth. Naomi stared at the documents for another moment before closing the folder carefully. The truth is that I do not want anything handed to me. Several employees nodded. That sounded exactly like her. William's smile widened. Good. Naomi looked around the dining room. The same room where she had spent years carrying trays, memorizing orders, and helping customers through ordinary days. The same room where she had walked out carrying a cardboard box less than 48 hours earlier. If I accept, she said slowly, I want to earn every part of it. William stood and extended his hand. That is precisely why you were chosen. Applause broke out across the restaurant. At first it came from a few employees. Then more joined. Customers followed. Soon the entire room was filled with smiles, laughter, and the sound of people celebrating someone they genuinely respected. Naomi covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of disbelief. Across the room, Donna Reed quietly gathered her belongings and left without a word. Harold Benson signed final transition documents before stepping away from management responsibilities. For the first time in years, the atmosphere inside the restaurant felt hopeful. Weeks passed. Changes arrived gradually. Employee training improved. Communication improved. Morale improved. People who once dreaded coming to work began taking pride in it again. Customers noticed the difference immediately. Business grew stronger than it had been in years. One bright Saturday morning, a small crowd gathered outside the entrance. A new sign had been installed above the doors. Employees stood together beneath the sunshine while William Sterling and Naomi Carter prepared to unveil it. Naomi looked up as the covering was removed. Her breath caught. Elegant lettering stretched across the polished sign. Naomi's table. The employees cheered. Lorraine Carter stood near the front of the crowd wiping tears from her eyes. William stepped back and allowed the moment to belong entirely to Naomi. Later that afternoon, as customers filled the dining room, one small item hung inside a glass frame near the entrance. It was an ordinary dinner receipt protected behind crystal-clear glass. Beneath it was a simple plaque. Kindness built this place. Hundreds of people would walk past it over the years. Most would see only paper and ink. But Naomi understood its true value. It was a reminder that one act of compassion could change a life. Sometimes, too, And every time she passed that framed receipt, she remembered the rainy night when $20 seemed like everything she had left, only to discover that kindness was worth far more than money could ever buy.